Chapter 23. From Gorky, Bennigsen descended the highroad to the bridge which, when they had looked at it from the hill, the officer had pointed out as being the center of our position and where rows of fragrant new-mown hay lay by the riverside. They rode across that bridge into the village of Borodino and thence turned to the left, passing an enormous number of troops and guns, and came to a high knoll where militiamen were digging. This was the redoubt, as yet unnamed, which afterwards became known as the Revsky Redoubt, or the Knoll Battery, but Pierre paid no special attention to it. He did not know that it would become more memorable to him than any other spot on the plain of Borodino. They then crossed the hollow to Semenovsk, where the soldiers were dragging away the last logs from the huts and barns. Then they rode downhill and uphill, across a ryefield trodden and beaten down as if by hail, following a track freshly made by the artillery over the furrows of the ploughed land, and reached some flèches asterisk which were still being dug. Asterisk, a kind of entrenchment. At the flèches Bennigsen stopped and began looking at the Shevardino redoubt opposite, which had been ours the day before and where several horsemen could be descried. The officers said that either Napoleon or Murat was there, and they all gazed eagerly at this little group of horsemen. Pierre also looked at them, trying to guess which of the scarcely discernible figures was Napoleon. At last those mounted men rode away from the mound and disappeared. Bennigsen spoke to a general who approached him, and began explaining the whole position of our troops. Pierre listened to him, straining each faculty to understand the essential points of the impending battle, but was mortified to feel that his mental capacity was inadequate for the task. He could make nothing of it. Bennigsen stopped speaking and, noticing that Pierre was listening, suddenly said to him, "I don't think this interests you." "On the contrary, it's very interesting," replied Pierre not quite truthfully. From the flèches they rode still farther to the left, along a road winding through a thick, low-growing birch wood. In the middle of the wood a brown hare with white feet sprang out and, scared by the tramp of the many horses, grew so confused that it leaped along the road in front of them for some time, arousing general attention and laughter, and only when several voices shouted at it did it dart to one side and disappear in the thicket. After going through the wood for about a mile and a half they came out on a glade where troops of Tuchkov's corps were stationed to defend the left flank. Here, at the extreme left flank, Bennigsen talked a great deal and with much heat, and, as it seemed to Pierre, gave orders of great military importance. In front of Tuchkov's troops was some high ground not occupied by troops. Bennigsen loudly criticized this mistake, saying that it was madness to leave a height which commanded the country around unoccupied and to place troops below it. Some of the generals expressed the same opinion. One in particular declared with martial heat that they were put there to be slaughtered. Bennigsen on his own authority ordered the troops to occupy the high ground. This disposition on the left flank increased Pierre's doubt of his own capacity to understand military matters. Listening to Bennigsen and the generals criticizing the position of the troops behind the hill, he quite understood them and shared their opinion, but for that very reason he could not understand how the man who put them there behind the hill could have made so gross and palpable a blunder. Pierre did not know that these troops were not, as Bennigsen supposed, put there to defend the position, but were in a concealed position as an ambush, that they should not be seen and might be able to strike an approaching enemy unexpectedly. Bennigsen did not know this and moved the troops forward according to his own ideas without mentioning the matter to the commander-in-chief. Chapter 24. On that bright evening of August 25, Prince Andrew lay leaning on his elbow in a broken-down shed in the village of Nyazkovo at the further end of his regiment's encampment. Through a gap in the broken wall he could see, beside the wooden fence, a row of 30-year-old birches with their lower branches lopped off, a field on which shocks of oats were standing, and some bushes near which rose the smoke of campfires, the soldiers' kitchens. Narrow and burdensome and useless to anyone as his life now seemed to him, Prince Andrew on the eve of battle felt agitated and irritable as he had done 7 years before at Austerlitz. He had received and given the orders for next day's battle and had nothing more to do. But his thoughts, the simplest, clearest, and therefore most terrible thoughts, would give him no peace. He knew that tomorrow's battle would be the most terrible of all he had taken part in, and for the first time in his life the possibility of death presented itself to him, not in relation to any worldly matter or with reference to its effect on others, but simply in relation to himself, to his own soul, vividly, plainly, terribly, and almost as a certainty. And from the height of this perception all that had previously tormented and preoccupied him suddenly became illumined by a cold white light without shadows, without perspective, without distinction of outline. All life appeared to him like magic lantern pictures at which he had long been gazing by artificial light through a glass. Now he suddenly saw those badly daubed pictures in clear daylight and without a glass. Yes, yes. There they are, those false images that agitated, enraptured, and tormented me, said he to himself, passing in review the principal pictures of the magic lantern of life and regarding them now in the cold white daylight of his clear perception of death. There they are, those rudely painted figures that once seemed splendid and mysterious. Glory, the good of society, love of a woman, the fatherland itself, how important these pictures appeared to me, with what profound meaning they seemed to be filled. And it is all so simple, pale, and crude in the cold white light of this morning which I feel is dawning for me. The three great sorrows of his life held his attention in particular, his love for a woman, his father's death, and the French invasion which had overrun half Russia. Love, that little girl who seemed to me brimming over with mystic forces. Yes, indeed, I loved her. I made romantic plans of love and happiness with her. Oh, what a boy I was, he said aloud bitterly. Ah me! I believed in some ideal love which was to keep her faithful to me for the whole year of my absence. Like the gentle dove in the fable she was to pine apart from me. But it was much simpler really. It was all very simple and horrible. When my father built Bald Hills he thought the place was his land, his air, his peasants. But Napoleon came and swept him aside, unconscious of his existence, as he might brush a chip from his path, and his Bald Hills and his whole life fell to pieces. Princess Mary says it is a trial sent from above. What is the trial for, when he is not here and will never return? He is not here. For whom then is the trial intended? The fatherland, the destruction of Moscow. And tomorrow I shall be killed, perhaps not even by a Frenchman but by one of our own men, by a soldier discharging a musket close to my ear as one of them did yesterday, and the French will come and take me by head and heels and fling me into a hole that I may not stink under their noses, and new conditions of life will arise, which will seem quite ordinary to others and about which I shall know nothing. I shall not exist. He looked at the row of birches shining in the sunshine, with their motionless green and yellow foliage and white bark. To die, to be killed tomorrow. That I should not exist. That all this should still be, but no me. And the birches with their light and shade, the curly clouds, the smoke of the campfires, and all that was around him changed and seemed terrible and menacing. A cold shiver ran down his spine. He rose quickly, went out of the shed, and began to walk about. After he had returned, voices were heard outside the shed. "Who's that?" he cried. The red-nosed Captain Timokhin, formerly Dólokhov's squadron commander, but now from lack of officers a battalion commander, shyly entered the shed followed by an adjutant and the regimental paymaster. Prince Andrew rose hastily, listened to the business they had come about, gave them some further instructions, and was about to dismiss them when he heard a familiar, lisping, voice behind the shed. "Devil take it," said the voice of a man stumbling over something. Prince Andrew looked out of the shed and saw Pierre, who had tripped over a pole on the ground and had nearly fallen, coming his way. It was unpleasant to Prince Andrew to meet people of his own set in general, and Pierre especially, for he reminded him of all the painful moments of his last visit to Moscow. "You? What a surprise," said he. "What brings you here? This is unexpected." As he said this his eyes and face expressed more than coldness, they expressed hostility, which Pierre noticed at once. He had approached the shed full of animation, but on seeing Prince Andrew's face he felt constrained and ill at ease. "I have come, simply, it interests me," said Pierre, who had so often that day senselessly repeated that word, interesting. "I wish to see the battle." "Oh yes, and what do the Masonic brothers say about war?" "How would they stop it?" said Prince Andrew sarcastically. "Well, and how's Moscow? And my people? Have they reached Moscow at last?" he asked seriously. Yes, they have. Julie Drubetskaya told me so. I went to see them, but missed them. They have gone to your estate near Moscow. Chapter 25. The officers were about to take leave, but Prince Andrew, apparently reluctant to be left alone with his friend, asked them to stay and have tea. Seats were brought in and so was the tea. The officers gazed with surprise at Pierre's huge stout figure and listened to his talk of Moscow and the position of our army, round which he had ridden. Prince Andrew remained silent, and his expression was so forbidding that Pierre addressed his remarks chiefly to the good-natured battalion commander. So you understand the whole position of our troops? Prince Andrew interrupted him. Yes, that is, how do you mean, said Pierre. Not being a military man I can't say I have understood it fully, but I understand the general position. Well, then, you know more than anyone else, be it who it may, said Prince Andrew. Oh, said Pierre, looking over his spectacles in perplexity at Prince Andrew. Well, and what do you think of Kutuzov's appointment, he asked. I was very glad of his appointment, that's all I know, replied Prince Andrew. And tell me your opinion of Barclay de Tolly. In Moscow they are saying heaven knows what about him. What do you think of him? Ask them, replied Prince Andrew, indicating the officers. Pierre looked at Timokhin with the condescendingly interrogative smile with which everybody involuntarily addressed that officer. We see light again, since his serenity has been appointed, your excellency, said Timokhin timidly, and continually turning to glance at his colonel. Why so? Asked Pierre. Well, to mention only firewood and fodder, let me inform you. Why, when we were retreating from Sventsyany we dare not touch a stick or a wisp of hay or anything. You see, we were going away, so he would get it all, wasn't it so, your excellency? And again Timokhin turned to the prince. But we daren't. In our regiment 2 officers were court-martialed for that kind of thing. But when his serenity took command everything became straightforward. Now we see light. Then why was it forbidden? Timokhin looked about in confusion, not knowing what or how to answer such a question. Pierre put the same question to Prince Andrew. Why, so as not to lay waste the country we were abandoning to the enemy, said Prince Andrew with venomous irony. It is very sound, one can't permit the land to be pillaged and accustom the troops to marauding. At Smolensk too he judged correctly that the French might outflank us, as they had larger forces. But he could not understand this, cried Prince Andrew in a shrill voice that seemed to escape him involuntarily. He could not understand that there, for the first time, we were fighting for Russian soil, and that there was a spirit in the men such as I had never seen before, that we had held the French for 2 days, and that success had increased our strength tenfold. He ordered us to retreat, and all our efforts and losses went for nothing. He had no thought of betraying us, he tried to do the best he could, he thought out everything, and that is why he is unsuitable. He is unsuitable now, just because he plans out everything very thoroughly and accurately as every German has to. How can I explain? Well, say your father has a German valet, and he is a splendid valet and satisfies your father's requirements better than you could, then it's all right to let him serve. But if your father is mortally sick you'll send the valet away and attend to your father with your own unpracticed, awkward hands, and will soothe him better than a skilled man who is a stranger could. So it has been with Barclay. While Russia was well, a foreigner could serve her and be a splendid minister, but as soon as she is in danger she needs one of her own kin. But in your club they have been making him out a traitor. They slander him as a traitor, and the only result will be that afterwards, ashamed of their false accusations, they will make him out a hero or a genius instead of a traitor, and that will be still more unjust. He is an honest and very punctilious German. And they say he's a skillful commander, rejoined Pierre. I don't understand what is meant by a skillful commander, replied Prince Andrew ironically. A skillful commander, replied Pierre. Why, one who foresees all contingencies, and foresees the adversary's intentions. But that's impossible, said Prince Andrew as if it were a matter settled long ago. Pierre looked at him in surprise. And yet they say that war is like a game of chess, he remarked. Yes, replied Prince Andrew, but with this little difference, that in chess you may think over each move as long as you please and are not limited for time, and with this difference too, that a knight is always stronger than a pawn, and two pawns are always stronger than one, while in war a battalion is sometimes stronger than a division and sometimes weaker than a company. The relative strength of bodies of troops can never be known to anyone. Believe me, he went on, if things depended on arrangements made by the staff, I should be there making arrangements, but instead of that I have the honor to serve here in the regiment with these gentlemen, and I consider that on us tomorrow's battle will depend and not on those others. Success never depends, and never will depend, on position, or equipment, or even on numbers, and least of all on position. But on what then? On the feeling that is in me and in him, he pointed to Timokhin, and in each soldier. Prince Andrew glanced at Timokhin, who looked at his commander in alarm and bewilderment. In contrast to his former reticent taciturnity, Prince Andrew now seemed excited. He could apparently not refrain from expressing the thoughts that had suddenly occurred to him. A battle is won by those who firmly resolve to win it. Why did we lose the battle at Austerlitz? The French losses were almost equal to ours, but very early we said to ourselves that we were losing the battle, and we did lose it. And we said so because we had nothing to fight for there, we wanted to get away from the battlefield as soon as we could. We've lost, so let us run, and we ran. If we had not said that till the evening, heaven knows what might not have happened. But tomorrow we shan't say it. You talk about our position, the left flank weak and the right flank too extended, he went on. That's all nonsense, there's nothing of the kind. But what awaits us tomorrow? 100 million most diverse chances which will be decided on the instant by the fact that our men or theirs run or do not run, and that this man or that man is killed, but all that is being done at present is only play. The fact is that those men with whom you have ridden round the position not only do not help matters, but hinder. They are only concerned with their own petty interests. At such a moment, said Pierre reproachfully. At such a moment. Prince Andrew repeated. To them it is only a moment affording opportunities to undermine a rival and obtain an extra cross or ribbon. For me tomorrow means this, a Russian army of 100,000 and a French army of 100,000 have met to fight, and the thing is that these 200,000 men will fight and the side that fights more fiercely and spares itself least will win. And if you like I will tell you that whatever happens and whatever muddles those at the top may make, we shall win tomorrow's battle. Tomorrow, happen what may, we shall win. There now, Your Excellency. That's the truth, the real truth, said Timokhin. Who would spare himself now? The soldiers in my battalion, believe me, wouldn't drink their vodka. It's not the day for that, they say. All were silent. The officers rose. Prince Andrew went out of the shed with them, giving final orders to the adjutant. After they had gone, Pierre approached Prince Andrew and was about to start a conversation when they heard the clatter of 3 horses' hoofs on the road not far from the shed, and looking in that direction Prince Andrew recognized Wolzogen and Clausewitz accompanied by a Cossack. They rode close by continuing to converse, and Prince Andrew involuntarily heard these words. Der Krieg muss in Rom verlegt werden. Der Ansicht kann ich nicht genig preis geben, said one of them. The war must be extended widely. I cannot sufficiently commend that view. Oh, ja, said the other, der Zweck ist nur den fein zu schwachen, so kann man gewiss nicht den Verluster Privatpersonen in Achtung nehmen. Oh, yes, the only aim is to weaken the enemy, so of course one cannot take into account the loss of private individuals. Oh, no, agreed the other. Extend widely, said Prince Andrew with an angry snort, when they had ridden past. In that extent were my father, son, and sister, at Bald Hills. That's all the same to him. That's what I was saying to you, those German gentlemen won't win the battle tomorrow but will only make all the mess they can, because they have nothing in their German heads but theories not worth an empty eggshell and haven't in their hearts the one thing needed tomorrow, that which Timokhin has. They have yielded up all Europe to him, and have now come to teach us. Fine teachers, and again his voice grew shrill. So you think we shall win tomorrow's battle? Asked Pierre. Yes, yes, answered Prince Andrew absently. One thing I would do if I had the power, he began again, would not take prisoners. Why take prisoners? It's chivalry. The French have destroyed my home and are on their way to destroy Moscow. They have outraged and are outraging me every moment. They are my enemies. In my opinion they are all criminals. And so thinks Timokhin and the whole army. They should be executed. Since they are my foes they cannot be my friends, whatever may have been said at Tilsit. Yes, yes, muttered Pierre, looking with shining eyes at Prince Andrew. I quite agree with you. The question that had perturbed Pierre on the Mozhaysk hill and all that day now seemed to him quite clear and completely solved. He now understood the whole meaning and importance of this war and of the impending battle. All he had seen that day, all the significant and stern expressions on the faces he had seen in passing, were lit up for him by a new light. He understood that latent heat, as they say in physics, of patriotism which was present in all these men he had seen, and this explained to him why they all prepared for death calmly, and as it were light-heartedly. Not take prisoners, Prince Andrew continued, that by itself would quite change the whole war and make it less cruel. As it is we have played at war, that's what's vile. We play at magnanimity and all that stuff. Such magnanimity and sensibility are like the magnanimity and sensibility of a lady who faints when she sees a calf being killed. She is so kind-hearted that she can't look at blood, but enjoys eating the calf served up with sauce. They talk to us of the rules of war, of chivalry, of flags of truce, of mercy to the unfortunate and so on. It's all rubbish. I saw chivalry and flags of truce in 1805, they humbugged us and we humbugged them. They plunder other people's houses, issue false paper money, and worst of all they kill my children and my father, and then talk of rules of war and magnanimity to foes. Take no prisoners, but kill and be killed. He who has come to this as I have through the same sufferings. Prince Andrew, who had thought it was all the same to him whether or not Moscow was taken as Smolensk had been, was suddenly checked in his speech by an unexpected cramp in his throat. He paced up and down a few times in silence, but his eyes glittered feverishly and his lips quivered as he began speaking. If there was none of this magnanimity in war, we should go to war only when it was worthwhile going to certain death, as now. Then there would not be war because Paul Ivanovitch had offended Michael Ivanovitch. And when there was a war, like this one, it would be war. And then the determination of the troops would be quite different. Then all these Westphalians and Hessians whom Napoleon is leading would not follow him into Russia, and we should not go to fight in Austria and Prussia without knowing why. War is not courtesy but the most horrible thing in life, and we ought to understand that and not play at war. We ought to accept this terrible necessity sternly and seriously. It all lies in that, get rid of falsehood and let war be war and not a game. As it is now, war is the favorite pastime of the idle and frivolous. The military calling is the most highly honored. But what is war? What is needed for success in warfare? What are the habits of the military? The aim of war is murder, the methods of war are spying, treachery, and their encouragement, the ruin of a country's inhabitants, robbing them or stealing to provision the army, and fraud and falsehood termed military craft. The habits of the military class are the absence of freedom, that is, discipline, idleness, ignorance, cruelty, debauchery, and drunkenness. And in spite of all this it is the highest class, respected by everyone. All the kings, except the Chinese, wear military uniforms, and he who kills most people receives the highest rewards. They meet, as we shall meet tomorrow, to murder one another, they kill and maim tens of thousands, and then have thanksgiving services for having killed so many people, they even exaggerate the number, and they announce a victory, supposing that the more people they have killed the greater their achievement. How does God above look at them and hear them? Exclaimed Prince Andrew in a shrill, piercing voice. Ah, my friend, it has of late become hard for me to live. I see that I have begun to understand too much. And it doesn't do for man to taste of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Ah, well, it's not for long, he added. However, you're sleepy, and it's time for me to sleep. Go back to Gorky, said Prince Andrew suddenly. "Oh no." Pierre replied, looking at Prince Andrew with frightened, compassionate eyes. "Go, go. Before a battle one must have one's sleep out," repeated Prince Andrew. He came quickly up to Pierre and embraced and kissed him. "Goodbye, be off," he shouted. "Whether we meet again or not," and turning away hurriedly he entered the shed. It was already dark, and Pierre could not make out whether the expression of Prince Andrew's face was angry or tender. For some time he stood in silence considering whether he should follow him or go away. "No, he does not want it," Pierre concluded. "And I know that this is our last meeting." He sighed deeply and rode back to Gorky. On re-entering the shed Prince Andrew lay down on a rug, but he could not sleep. He closed his eyes. One picture succeeded another in his imagination. On one of them he dwelt long and joyfully. He vividly recalled an evening in Petersburg. Natasha with animated and excited face was telling him how she had gone to look for mushrooms the previous summer and had lost her way in the big forest. She incoherently described the depths of the forest, her feelings, and a talk with a beekeeper she met, and constantly interrupted her story to say, "No, I can't. I'm not telling it right, no, you don't understand," though he encouraged her by saying that he did understand, and he really had understood all she wanted to say. But Natasha was not satisfied with her own words, she felt that they did not convey the passionately poetic feeling she had experienced that day and wished to convey. He was such a delightful old man, and it was so dark in the forest, and he had such kind. "No, I can't describe it," she had said, flushed and excited. Prince Andrew smiled now the same happy smile as then when he had looked into her eyes. "I understood her," he thought. "I not only understood her, but it was just that inner, spiritual force, that sincerity, that frankness of soul, that very soul of hers which seemed to be fettered by her body, it was that soul I loved in her, loved so strongly and happily," and suddenly he remembered how his love had ended. He did not need anything of that kind. He neither saw nor understood anything of the sort. He only saw in her a pretty and fresh young girl, with whom he did not deign to unite his fate. And he is still alive and gay. Prince Andrew jumped up as if someone had burned him, and again began pacing up and down in front of the shed.